This is the Open University.
Hello and welcome to the Open University, where we always wear shades indoors, of course, sometimes don't. I'm in Paris and I've been having a wonderful time on my new e-scooter, which is a Xiaomi 365 Mi. But it's in the shop just now, unfortunately. It's being fixed. I think I might be able to pick it up today a bit later on, because the very first day I had it, I got a puncture. Mainly because my girlfriend was on the back, and you're supposed to have a maximum weight load of 100 kilograms. I, on my own, am 74 kilograms. She's another 50 something. So obviously that was putting a lot of stress on the back, and we went down some very cobbled streets with sort of broken glass and little bars and things, and got a puncture. So I chained the machine up outside a police station, thinking that'd be the safest place, when we went to the Café Royal for a coffee at my favorite cafe, which is the Café Kitsune, in the Palais Royal, where you can sit sipping your coffee, looking at the fountains with your feet up. And when I came back to push the Xiaomi home, somebody had actually opened it, because there are these little tongue-shaped things which you can put in the bit where it folds. It sort of opens up and folds together in a clever way, and some people think you can put a shock absorber in there and get a better ride. So somebody had actually opened it up to look in that. So I'm kind of wondering how long this gadget will last. It's a wonderful life-enhancing thing, though, and I'm all in favor of electrifying transport within cities. This is something Berlin has not yet permitted. There's actually an ongoing dispute in Berlin between the police and the city. The police think that these e-scooters should not be on the pavement, and the city wants to encourage ecologically sound, emission-free vehicles. So there's currently a kind of endless dispute, and who knows, it was going to be spring when they decided, but it still hasn't been decided. So Paris is very much ahead in that sense, and it's ahead because it's a tourist city. And here, people they come to have fun, they come to enjoy themselves, and it's a very life-affirming thing. It's also a city it's a bit more like an apartment. I always think this about the kind of initiatives that Paris mayors come up with, like to turn the Paris plage, to turn the banks of the Seine into a kind of urban beach. It's almost like a kind of interior decoration approach to a city, where you make it as habitable as possible and also as visitable as possible for visitors and tourists. And here I'm really finding, rather than going down into the dreadful bowels of the metro, which really do smell like bowels and bladders, you can stay on the surface, and you can, with a little discomfort and a little danger, which is actually quite thrilling in that Nietzschean sense of live dangerously, you can see how the city all links up. Because even though I lived in this city for 2 years, I hadn't actually made the connections between the 11th arrondissement and the 12th. They're all very conveniently, neighbouring each other, consecutively numbered. But I'd only ever sort of come up from this hellhole of the metro and then discovered the neighbourhood lying around that, and then gone back down into the metro and gone to a different district. Hadn't really ever seen how they connect. So here I'm in the 12th arrondissement and living on the Place d'Allique in my girlfriend's apartment. I'm spending about half the month in Berlin, half the month in Paris. And the attraction near here is the Père Lachaise cemetery, which of course famously has, I was going to say Jim Davidson, Jim Morrison, everyone bowing down around Jim Davidson's tomb. Unfortunately, he's still alive, and he's a bit of a Brexiter. But no, Jim Morrison, I don't know what his position was on Brexit, probably anti, since he was very pro-European. But I was more excited by the fact that Pascal Augier is buried in Père Lachaise. I went there a few weeks ago, and it's kind of just up the hill from here. So if you take the scooter out and you start going up a hill, you probably will end up at Père Lachaise. I mean, we all end up at Père Lachaise, figuratively speaking, and sooner or later. Before I bought my Xiaomi and had it for one day before puncturing it, I was taking Lime scooters every day, and those are about €5 a time. You know, if you go in from here to the centre of town, it's €5, pretty much €5. So obviously, spending €300-400 on your own scooter makes a lot of sense. And there's a whole lore of scooters. I mean, these scooter companies which are renting scooters are becoming, I think they're called unicorns. These are the most highly monetized of new startup companies. A unicorn is a startup which has scored $1 billion in investment. So Lime and one other of these electric scooter companies, they're both unicorn companies in that sense, that they're obviously exploding. This is the transport of the future. And cities, the sooner cities embrace these zero emissions vehicles, single user or double user in my case, breaking the law and breaking the scooter, the better. But it does mean there's a bit of a bit of a struggle, a bit of a free-for-all. And what really surprises me is how well disposed the Parisians are to these vehicles. They take them in their stride. I don't see, as in Germany, you probably get old ladies and old men kind of scolding you very severely for riding on the pavement, which you get for bicycle riding on the pavement in Berlin anyway, although that's a kind of ambiguous situation too. But here the police don't stop you if you're two on a scooter. They don't stop you if you're on the pavement on a scooter. These things are technically all worthy of a €300 fine, but as far as I know, nobody has ever been fined. So I think it's the way of the future, and it reminds me a bit of when I lived in New York. I used to have a razor scooter, just a manual kick scooter, and I used to kick. I probably wouldn't be so happy doing that in my new shoes, which are Repettos. I just bought some Repettos. These were the favorite shoes of Serge Gainsbourg, white and very soft leather, and they're actually made by a ballet company. Repetto makes ballet shoes, handmade leather, so they're very comfortable. You can wear them with no socks without getting blisters. I'm so used to breaking in new shoes with blisters, but so far no blisters on these. So yeah, I might not want to scuff them though by kicking a kick scooter. But that was how I discovered New York when I lived there. Me and Shizu, my girlfriend at the time, lived on Orchard Street. And I'm just about to come up to this bit in my memoir, so I suppose I'm kind of reliving that. It's funny, I'm kind of reliving. It's almost like I've run out of new cities to go to live in, because I've come back to Paris. I lived here in the 90s. I've only lived in New York once, though. I don't think I'd go back to New York because it's horrendously expensive now. There's no way I could live on Orchard Street anymore. Somehow, Paris is still livable. It's expensive, though. It's much more expensive than Berlin. But my feeling about Paris this time is that there's a kind of the high density is actually kind of Asian, and I like that. I like the fact that these medieval pavements in, for instance, Le Marais, with their kind of spindly metal, I always think they're horse tethering rods or something, I don't know what they are, metal barriers to keep the cars on the road. I mean, Le Marais is really now, it's really a battlefield between motorized traffic and pedestrians, and these people who are sort of in between, who are amphibious on their e-scooters or whatever. And at the weekend we had some people shouting at us. We were walking down one of these very narrow streets, just walking in the middle of the road, and a van came past and the people were shouting out of the van, "You have the pavement, you people. This is not the pavement, this is the road." You know, the vehicle drivers were furious that there was this reclaim the streets thing going on right in front of them. They were being forced to slow down and stop, and it was almost impassable. There's something also we're getting a lot with the Gilets jaunes demonstrations on Saturdays, mostly just weekends and mostly just Saturdays. A lot of the big avenues are closed off, and that paradoxically makes a wonderful, peaceful situation in most of Paris, where the cars, which are the main enemy, and which of course are the token, the badge of honor of the Gilets jaunes is their cars and their right to use their cars. So it's sort of ironic that what they're doing is demotorizing Paris. So you can actually, and this again reminds me of New York, because when 9/11 happened, that's when I was living in New York, It was the most beautiful weather and the most peaceful time was just after it happened, when they sealed off the whole of Lower Manhattan from 14th Street downwards. And there was this amazing opportunity to walk around, although me and my friend who was with me at the time had to wear face masks. We had to wear tenugouilles to protect our breathing, because obviously this jet fuel smoke was kind of billowing out, and it depended which way the wind was blowing. Of course, we had at the weekend we had this tragic fire in Notre-Dame Cathedral here in Paris, and the first I heard of something on Facebook, I think, or Twitter about it, and I just walked out onto my balcony and I saw the smoke on the horizon, and it reminded me instantly of 9/11, because that was a similar experience, looking from Orchard Street across towards the World Trade Center, seeing it in smoke, actually hearing, I heard the first explosion, the first plane coming in. This will all be in my book, of course, but it did remind me, it put me in a similar, slightly apocalyptic mindset to see that happening, to see that unfolding in front of me. And so, yeah, throwbacks, flashbacks, a sense of history. I wasn't particularly attached to Notre-Dame. I think it's an ugly cathedral. I go into smaller churches from time to time, and I like certain things about them, especially if they're neglected or they have some quirky atmosphere. Or what I like actually in church lobbies and the sort of side of the back of the church is the information systems they use, or the speaker systems they use. They have amazing long pillar-shaped speakers. I was happy though to hear that the information systems, in the sense of giving out leaflets and putting those leaflets on specially designed, rather sedate and demure shelves or stands, or postcard racks or pegboard and little screws to hang relics on. The sort of rather fusty shop display systems they use. But I was happy to hear that the organ in Notre-Dame had survived this great fire. In fact, all the relics as well, the supposed crown of thorns of Christ, which they were keeping there. One of many, I'm sure, in many cathedrals throughout the world. But these things, I was happy more for the organ, because that's the one that Messiaen used to play. You can hear recordings of Messiaen pieces played on the organ at Notre-Dame, and apparently it's still functioning, it's still been preserved. What else can I tell you? Yeah, I think it's this sense of, I always use the word éclatant, a brightness, a kind of responsiveness, which, I was going to say about these narrow pavements in Le Marais, that you have to negotiate. It's a bit like, in shops in France, or basically in any situation, you have to say bonjour to people. You have to basically introduce yourself, say hello to people, start conversing with people. And it's this kind of the same on a pavement. You really have to, if you're on a pavement with room only for one person, which is very often the case, who's going to step off, who's going to... And so courtoisie, a kind of chivalric code almost kicks in. People aren't as rude here as they are in Germany, I would say. People are quite brusque and critical of each other in Germany, and just tend to otherwise be rather cold. And they don't quite have the tourist habit of accepting people who look different and strange. I've been getting some compliments, actually. Since buying these shoes, these expensive shoes, I think Parisians are very easily impressed by expensive shoes, especially if they're the favoured choice of Serge Gainsbourg. And so your whole outfit actually kind of clicks if the shoes are right. So previously I had some shoes not dissimilar to these, but they were very cheap, 10 euros, Japanese carpenter shoes. But these ones are expensive, soft leather, etc., etc. So I think Parisians kind of... And so I've been getting people shouting as I zip by on my scooter, which seems to be a way to be seen in the city. It's a particular way to be seen because you're standing upright, and it's almost as if you're hovering, you're sort of zipping through the city faster than a pedestrian, but you're kind of being seen in an upright stance, and it's almost as if you're hovering through the city at the height of 3-4 inches off the ground. A sort of magic quality still to it. So it does seem to attract a lot of attention if you're wearing an outfit that's moderately interesting. So a lot of people have been shouting stylé at me, and I didn't really know this word, but apparently it means stylish, stylé. Somebody shouted out "Oh la beauté," "Oh beauty," as I passed. So I'm obviously doing something right. Sometimes you just get people, crotchety people, sort of saying "non, non, non." whispering to each other. I don't know. It's not all positive, but that is also part of the negotiations that go on in the city, whether you're going to admire someone, tolerate someone. So I think there is a sense here of a bella figura, as the Italians say, bella figura, making a faire face, to make a face in the city, to make an appearance of yourself and for yourself in the city, to be a little dandyish, and flaneur, all these words which come from this city, the Baudelairean figure of the flaneur, developed by Walter Benjamin, of course, in his Arcades project, and so on. So I'm kind of enjoying being slightly flamboyant in Paris, and talking to people and negotiating the density of things, because it does, as I said, it has this Asian density. I don't know the stats, I should have looked up the figures before making this, but the density of Paris is much higher than most European densities, certainly than Berlin. We hear famously that Berlin is 8 times the surface size of Paris and very spread out and rather unintense. I think you have to really thrive on the intensity, the events per second of a city, an inner city, to really thrive in Paris. You really, because that kind of intensity and density potentially can be a nightmare if things start to go wrong. If you're on the metro and it's rush hour or whatever and people are not being nice to each other, this chivalric thing is not working. But when they go right and the weather's beautiful and people are being nice to you and everyone's got a kind of spring flowers in their hearts, as they do just now, because we have the first really warm weather. It's in the mid-20s for the next few days. The Easter weekend is going to be very beautiful weather. So I think it's going to bring out the best of density. And the best of density is just excitement, events per second. And of course, when you're going on a scooter, these things do 25 kilometers per hour. You're getting a lot of events per second. You're seeing a lot of Paris squeezed into a little time. And that's the excitement of it. There's just so much to look at and so much to... Of course, you have to negotiate with the traffic. But you get these... You're amphibious. You can go on the pavement sometimes. You can go on the road sometimes. There are moments when there's no traffic at all on a big boulevard and you get the whole thing to yourself, and other moments when you have to sort of get away from the traffic and find a back street and go up that way. But you're never... There's no embouteillage, there's no bottling in, there's no kind of bottlenecks and traffic jams. If you're that small and nimble, basically you can steer around problems and you can route around. It's like the internet was. The idea of the internet, before people like the British government got their clumsy gloves onto it, you could actually route around any obstacles and any problems which appear in your way. I think that's all I want to say this time. I'm very much enjoying Paris, enjoying it a little bit too much for it to be an ideal place for me to get my work done. So I should probably go back to writing my book.
Open University.